What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Couple on Fire podcast. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about Rachel and Dave Hollis and about their divorce. And that's coming up
right now.
Are you a Christian and you are looking to take your faith, your family, and your future to the next level?
Then this is the channel for you.
Welcome, everybody. This is episode number 20. I am one of your hosts, Josh, and I'm here with the always gorgeous,
oh my gosh,
Kristy. So today's episode, we're actually going to talk about something that's pretty controversial. It's actually something that Kristy stumbled upon not too long ago, just actually a few days ago, and we've actually had huge conversations about it. Yeah. We thought it'd be really important to talk about it because this isn't a real familiar space for us. So Rachel and Dave Hollis. Who is Rachel and Dave Hollis? So I want to put up on the screen, and maybe somebody out there that's going to watch today recognizes who this person is, but Rachel Hollis is somebody that... okay, well, I was going to put it on the screen, but apparently it doesn't want to play. Anyway, so Rachel Hollis is somebody that wrote a book called Girl Wash Your Face, and it became one of New York Times best-selling lists. It was a huge book that she sold. It was really to inspire and encourage women overall to not be quiet, to step up, to stand out. It's actually a book that Kristy started reading actually recently. And not only did that book take off, but then they started doing a lot of other stuff in the self-help industry. They started doing a lot of conferences, and they've really focused a lot of their podcasts, and they actually have their own podcast out about marriage. And we thought it would be really key to talk about this today.
Yeah, I was telling Josh, I'm really sad about it, actually, because I just started listening to her book, Girl Wash Your Face, and I've had a couple people suggest their podcast to me to listen to because, we've told people about what we do, what our goal is, faith, family, and future to the next level. And I've had multiple people say, hey, you really need to check out Rachel and Dave Hollis's podcast. And I've been told over the months since we've started doing this, I've had it mentioned to me a couple times. So then I started listening to her book because her book's been mentioned to me way longer than before we started our podcast. And so I'm like, okay, one morning I'm like, I really want to check them out and start hearing what they have to say about some things just to see, for content and comparison and all this stuff. And so when I looked it up and I'm like, no way, what? I've heard such influencers for marriage and Christianity, and I was just really sad to hear about it. So then, of course, I started listening to other podcasts that are out there of other people that are talking about it, and of course, giving their opinion on what they think happened, because each of them posted on their social media pages, Rachel on hers and Dave on his, about that they've been unhappy for a few years and, please respect their privacy during this time because they are still real people as they work through this because they have 4 kids together. And it was shocking at first when I had to call him right away. I was getting ready to pull into work and I call him. I'm like, you will never believe this. And he didn't even believe it.
No. So, okay. So it's just really a technical thing because I'm a moron sometimes.
Oh my goodness.
So, okay.
Don't
so
talk
this
about yourself that way.
This is the book. This is the book. And I don't know if anybody recognizes her or not, but like Kristy said, it is a shock. And this is something that we found on YouTube the other day too. This is one of their videos that they said, 5 tips to improve your marriage. Improve your marriage with these 5 tips. And this was 2 years ago. And they came out in their post and they actually talked about,
They've been miserable for 3.
Yeah, exactly. So they've been miserable for 3 years already.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. We feel in our hearts that it's really important that when things like this happen, that we talk about it. Yeah. It's important that we discuss this and what can we learn from it? Because the whole idea is how are we going to take our faith, our family, and our future to the next level? And that's to not just learn from our own mistakes, but let's learn from what other people are doing. Yeah. And not necessarily their mistakes, but maybe just things that went wrong. I mean, there is things in life that happen to us, whether it's a mistake or not, it's a lesson to be learned from it. And so we thought that it'd be really important for us today to talk about this. Let's talk about the importance of what we can learn from these, from this travesty that's going on in their lives right now. I mean, literally they have millions and millions of followers. So they have people right now that feel betrayed. They really do. They feel betrayed. Like, you can read stuff on social media.
A lot of people feel like they've been bamboozled, and I really don't like that, because Josh and I talk about to other married couples about this stuff all the time. Or when you hear about people getting divorced, you never know what happens behind closed doors, right? You don't know. So we don't want to judge them, and that doesn't mean that the content that they're releasing about what will make a relationship better is wrong.
Right.
It just means some of the points that we're going to cover today, obviously, they weren't doing. And so we want to obviously take it as a learning experience and what we can learn from that. But we're not judging them. We don't know them personally. We just know how sad it is. I've already became a fan of hers, listening to her book, and then what they were trying to do for other married couples out there, what they were doing, trying to get them to improve, really focus on one another. So it really just is really sad.
It is. And I think it's real easy for us. So I think people are fallible, right? So people are imperfect. We're all imperfect. We all have sin nature. We all fall. Everybody does. Well, except for her. And so, the whole thing is, though, I think what it's easy for Christians a lot of times to do is, Kristy loves saying this, that's water. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? And the idea is just because something went wrong doesn't mean that everything that they said now can just be thrown out. Like it's not good content or it's bad stuff. And this doesn't make them bad people. This just means there was a lot of bad decisions probably that happened apparently to lead to this. And one of the big parts of it, and something that I've really personally taken away from it, and it's not one of our points, but one of my personal things is if I rely on just my ability to be a good husband and I just rely on Kristy to be a good wife, our marriage won't make it.
Right.
It just won't make it. And if we're not willing to put God in the center of that and say, God has to have control over our marriage, not Josh and Kristy. Now, I need to be obedient to that. And I need to be obedient to what God's asking me and what God's asking her. But ultimately, are we being obedient to God? Or are we getting lost up in other stuff and not doing that and saying, you know what? I've done everything I can do, and that's why our marriage failed. It's already failed at that point if I'm already feeling that way. So, so anyway, so we want to talk about three different to be honest with you, we could probably about 40 things on here, but we tried to condense it down to just three. So the first one is take your own advice.
Yeah. So Josh and I talked about a lot of this stuff, obviously, before we started the podcast. And it's, if you listen to some of the advice that they were given for married couples, and they were saying, it's important to have a date night. It's important to sit down like once a week and coordinate the schedules. Like, because they both at first, before he started becoming the CEO of her business, he had his own career path. And so they would say, it's important to sit down and coordinate your schedules and be on the same page and communicate with one another. So those things that they were saying are true. They need to do those things, relationships, be present. But then Josh and I were talking about, they obviously didn't take their own advice, because we can go through the motions. We talk about it with church even all the time. Like, just because you're at church every time that the doors are open doesn't mean that you're growing your relationship with God. That means you're in the church building. So just because you have this 12-step program of how a marriage should go and these check boxes of what you should be doing each week or each month or each year with one another, and you're going through check, it doesn't mean you're growing your relationship with one another and you're actually present and investing in the relationship in each other. It just means you're doing your things that you're supposed to do. You're checking the boxes. And we talk about that in our relationship with God. We talk about that in our relationships with other people. We talk about that in life. If you just get up every day, go to work, punch a time clock, and come home, and you're not trying to improve your character, give the best that you can the entire time that you're, make other people's lives better when you're there. It's not, you're not present. You're not investing. You're not investing in it.
Yeah, so my dad retired as a construction manager, and he found a lot of success in his career doing that. My dad is an intelligent person, and he has the best work ethic that I've ever seen. But just like most people say about car mechanics, my house at home growing up always had projects around the house, always half done, right? My dad would always start them and not finish them. But that's never how his work was. And the thing is it's really hard. When you're doing it every single day, when you're going and you're giving advice and you're telling people and you're showing people and you're going through it, it's really hard to sit down and reevaluate what's going on at home in between your own relationship and say, wait a minute, Wait a minute. I tell everybody else that they need to pray every day, they need to read their Bible every day, that they need to go to church every week, they need to do all this stuff. But wait a minute. What am I doing? Am I taking this own advice? Am I swallowing what I'm spitting? Literally, am I doing that? Am I going through the motions like Kristy said? Or am I actually taking the advice? And that takes a lot of humility to do that, because it's hard. Because when you start finding success at certain things in life, especially when it's giving advice and showing people how you've done something successfully, and you're teaching these people this stuff, you get lost up in the pride portions of it, and you lose the humility part of it and say, wait a minute. I need to keep myself grounded and make sure that this advice that I'm given, that I'm taking and using myself. I listened to this YouTube video today about a guy that's talking about the coaching industry and stuff, and he's a coach. And at the very end, the person interviewing him asked him about some advice. And the guy sat there for a second, and he's like, I don't give advice. I'm a coach, I help encourage people to find their own answers. So I really can't give you any advice right now. So which I thought was really impressive. And I didn't feel like he was skating what the guy was asking him. I felt like he was living true to what he is. He was really living true to that. And that's really hard. And we have to give ourselves some slack. It's easy to get lost up and forget to take our own advice.
Yeah. We talk about that stuff all the time. That's why I think it's, but I mean, I give advice obviously because we do Celebrate Recovery, and I'm someone's sponsor or accountability partner. But I've talked about it before on other podcasts. Like if someone says, what do you think that I should do? I tell them, well, this is what certain steps that helped me. Yeah. But if you invest too much in that with that person, you actually start getting mad if they don't take your advice. So it's easy just to say, this is what I'm going to coach you to do. This is the things that I'm leading you towards to do. But if you don't do it, that's on you. I don't have to get upset about it or, take it personally or anything like that.
And that's so true. And that's the one thing, too, we get tied to other people's results. We get tied up and say, well, if they succeed, then I'm excited. And then if they don't succeed, then I'm upset. We all fail. We all fail to some degree. But we have to remember, what type of presence do I have? Have I been put in a position where I have a large presence? I need to make sure that I'm taking that extra time and stepping back and taking the advice that I'm giving people.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So number two is be vulnerable and transparent.
Yes. So I'm going to tell a little story that Josh doesn't even know that I'm going to tell. So we didn't talk about this beforehand.
I'm going to mute her. Hang on.
No.
No. Just kidding.
Okay. So being vulnerable and transparent, obviously we talked about them and they weren't. Okay. So if 2 years ago they released 5 tips to help their marriage, maybe they were doing the 5 tips personally, but they weren't being vulnerable and transparent with their audience. And what would have happened if they would have done that? Like, hey guys, we're being influencers for marriage, and this is what is going on in our marriage right now. And then this is what we're trying to do to fix it. Maybe they didn't want to be flooded with advice from people that don't really know them and things like that. We don't know, but we know that they weren't being vulnerable and transparent. We know that without a shadow of a doubt because they posted after they've been doing a podcast every day live, every day about marriage and doing all these rise things that they do together. And then to say that they've been unhappy for 3 years. So Sunday, him and I got in a little tiff a little bit, right? So, and we don't fight that often, okay? We don't have disagreements that often. So on Sunday we go to church, and on Saturday, this is how being vulnerable and transparent works, okay? Because if you talk things through, you realize that it's a communication problem. It's not because your partner's being malicious towards you. And if you really understand your partner's on the same team as you and you love them and they love you, you need to remind yourself of that when you're angry. And I was really proud of myself, okay, with the way that I handled it. So Saturday we talked about going to the store, and Josh was like, do we have to go to the store today? No. So we had a whole conversation about going to church on Sunday. It was our outdoor gathering. We were going to probably leave around 1. We could go to the store afterward, get what we need to, because our son's open houses this weekend, get the stuff that we need for that, and then come home, and I have like an obscene amount of laundry to do, which I know that people can understand that when you have a house full of people. And he had a paper to go. So we get there, and he forgot that we had this whole conversation, which I didn't know until later. And they are having a cornhole tournament at our outdoor gathering, and he came up to me, and he's like, I'm on the phone. And he's like, I'm going to get in the cornhole game. And I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking a game of cornhole. So around 2:30, they're still in this cornhole because he keeps winning with his partner. And finally, I'm getting more mad because I feel like he's disregarding my plans, our plans to go do this stuff. So I go up to him and I'm like, I'm going home, and he's like, well, how am I supposed to go home? I'm like, you're gonna have to find a ride to get home. So I leave, I go home, and then one of our sons are here that drive. I'm like, you need to go back up and you need to pick him up. You need to take the van, go up to the church and pick him up. So then I'm texting him, and I'm saying, I'm really upset. I feel like it was really rude that you disregarded our plans. And he said, I'm sorry, and then we get home. We both are cooled down a little bit. He doesn't get home till like 4 o'clock.
It's because we won. Okay, finish.
Mm-hmm. So we then, finished. I'm finishing the laundry up, but we decide to go to the store. So when we pull into the parking lot, him and I have had multiple, because we don't argue or disagree in front of the kids, right? So we never have. And our kids are old now. And we get to the grocery store and we sit in the parking lot. And we've done this so many times, in the driveway, in the parking lots of places, in the bathroom with the doors closed, and I'm like, I'm not that mad anymore. I'm just really hurt. I feel like you just disregarded our plans, that at that time I wasn't important to you. We made the plans and it just didn't care, and he's like, I didn't even think we were going to the store. This is what I was thinking. Like, we're going to go to church and then go home, get in the pool for a little bit. And then you had laundry. And then I had to remind him of the plans we made the day before. I also had to remind him that, okay, they were eating there, but they had hot dogs. And so I didn't eat. I figured he didn't eat. I didn't see him eat. Apparently he ate. So I was thinking he didn't, and we could go get lunch together and we could spend time together and have just a great afternoon. I have this expectation in my head. So when I got home, though, from that, before he got home, it was important for me to remind myself, I'm mad right now and it's okay for me to be mad, but my partner isn't doing it on purpose. He's saying he's sorry. He didn't do it to hurt me. I'm upset about it. I can talk to him about it, but I also need to be forgiving towards him about it. I need to work through my anger feelings healthy, but also remember who he is as a person. And he loves me, and he wouldn't maliciously just disregard plans that we have together. And when I start reminding myself of that, I can then work through my anger in a healthy way, talk to him about it. He knows I'm not coming at him, blaming him, saying, you did it on purpose, and so then he's more apt to tell me he's sorry. And then we both can understand that it's a two-way street. Now, what he doesn't know is I had a huge humbling experience when I got to work on Monday. Because when I got to work on Monday, I had people ask me how the holiday weekend was. And I was asking them how their holiday weekend went. And then one of the girls was like, did you have a good date night? And I'm like, date night? And she goes, yeah, on Friday, you posted on Facebook and you tagged in that you and Josh were at a restaurant and you were having date night. And I'm like, I probably shouldn't have gotten so mad about Sunday. Because I was telling him we never get alone time together. And I forgot we even went on a date night. You didn't even know that story yet because I haven't wanted to tell you. But I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, see, I got so caught up in the day and the vision of what I had for the day. I was just mad about it instead of being like, no, I understood he didn't do it on purpose. But then also, like, we just had a date night on Friday. I can calm down a little bit, stuff. So yeah, but that's what I think being vulnerable and transparent is supposed to be, though. They should have just been open and honest with their followers on what they were struggling with in their relationship and how they don't need to take the advice of other people, but they need to let them know, like, and that's part of our job, right? We want to have people take their faith, family, and future to the next level. Yep. And we want to talk about what we go through in our relationship, and we have disagreements. We don't get along. I was really angry. He was ready to quit the tournament. He was ready to tell his partner, I'm gone. I'm leaving, because I was mad. And I didn't want him to do that. No, I've talked for a long time now.
That's okay. The thing is with vulnerability is being willing to expose the real parts of who you are and not hide behind it. And I think, especially when like the Dave and the Rachel Hollis thing is let's just be real about it. They sell good, healthy marriage. They sell good relationship. They sell honesty and truth. They sell that, right? That's like their business. That's what they do. So the first thing they should do is not fear that they're going to lose if they're open and honest about it, but embrace it and say, hey, this is just who we are, because marriage is messy. It's tough. But the point is Kristy can say these things because she can trust that I'm not going to use it against her or get... None of that. We don't do that. We've never played that game. We don't do that stuff because...
This is also both of our second marriage, okay? So.
It is, and we've learned.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not perfect, until now. No. No. But, we've learned along the way. And, Kristy will tell you, I've never said a cross word to her ever, and I won't. I refuse.
In 10 years, he hasn't.
No matter how mad I get, I refuse to do it because I know what regret's like. I understand regret. So I tell myself, Josh, it's never worth doing something that you can't take back. And when we talk about being vulnerable and transparent, it's just like, look, I need to be honest, like upfront and honest no matter what. And I get it. You have 2 million followers. You have this huge multi-million dollar business. And if you really feel like it's going to crumble because you can't be vulnerable and transparent and honest, then you're misleading the people that you're talking to.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is they're proclaimed Christians too.
They are.
And God was not included, I don't think, in that decision.
No,
because if God needs to be, if they would have been open, honest, and vulnerable, and they would have trusted God with what would happen with their business, and not cared really what would have happened with the business, but cared more about what would have happened with their marriage and given that over to God, God would have brought them through it.
And I will say this right now because I have the utmost confidence in it. I will be married to Kristy until I die. I know that. I don't even have to think twice about it. Not because I trust in me or trust in her, because I trust in God. And I believe that as long as I keep close to him and trust in him and follow him and take his advice, that I will be the best version that's possible for her. Because me, myself, I'm not capable. I'm incapable as a human being to be perfect for her. But with God, I'm able to do what she needs. And that's
there's
it.
Hard years.
There's yes.
It's not hard days in marriage. And that's what newlyweds don't understand. But him and I have been married before. And we've been married now to one another. We were married before to other people. And we're married now to one another, that it's not hard days in marriage. There's hard years, hard months sometimes.
Yeah.
Because you guys start getting on different paths and you're not communicating and your hearts start hardening to one another. And it's so important that when your heart starts hardening, number one, that you start praying for your partner, because God softens your heart through that. And then you start praying for yourself and your marriage. And then to sit down and lovingly talk to one another. We have been angry with one another. I was angry with him on Sunday and said, I am really angry. I just think it was really rude of you. I felt slighted. And if he in that turn gets defensive and said, you shouldn't feel that way, he's healthy. He understands that I am allowed to feel that way. No matter what he says is not going to change my feelings of anger at that time about that. Mm-hmm. So for him to say, I'm sorry, this is what I was thinking in my head, though. It opens my eyes to listen, like not listen to respond, but listen to understand, because I love him and he's my partner. And a lot of times our flesh wants to fight against that because we want to be mad, right? We want to be mad. We want to be right. And the other person needs to pay, and you have to release that. Because the biggest thing in life, the biggest thing is Satan, when it comes to marriage, he wants to break you up. That's his number one goal. Because that marriage is a sacred thing that's unified through God. And he wants to break that up no matter what. He wants to break up families. He wants to break you up. So it's not about you two in that moment. It's about your testimony to God, you putting God in the center of that, and you softening that to listen to that person, and then that person listens to you. So him not saying a cross word to me, I don't want people to misinterpret that either. I mean, he's called me in the bedroom before, shut the door, and after weeks of me being just a terror and being like, what is going on with you? Like, you are seriously just being mean, so he'll get direct with me, but he doesn't call me a name You know, he doesn't belittle me. He doesn't make me feel like my feelings are stupid, which is a huge thing for me, because a lot of us ladies will feel like if we're crying or if we're upset about something or we're emotional about something, we're already telling ourselves like, this is so stupid. I should be stronger than this. And when we have somebody that's beating us down and telling us like, yeah, that is stupid, you shouldn't care, it hurts. So when you have someone that embraces and loves you and says, it's okay to have those feelings. I love you and you're allowed to have those feelings. Just don't belittle your man. You know, don't belittle him. Like, respect him and respect one another.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we look at our marriage and say, I don't feel comfortable being vulnerable and transparent. Maybe I need to work on that then. Yeah. Maybe that's the part of our marriage that needs to be worked on. And let's just be honest, you know, we don't know Rachel and Dave Hollis personally. So we can't judge their situation. But what we can do is we can look as an outsider and say, we know for a fact you weren't vulnerable and transparent to the people that follow you, you know, because what makes you a leader is not the name and it's not the position. It's whether people are following you. And they had a following, a big following. And that comes with a great responsibility, which is what comes us to number 3. You know, a high calling requires high responsibility. And high responsibility is something that we don't always want to accept. You know, I watch sports figures, you know, and you say, okay, you're making $30 million a year and you're amazing at your sport. But guess what? So is 9-year-old Tim. You know, 9-year-old Tim looks at you in the light and he sees that you're out drinking and driving and you're smoking this, that, and the other. And you're womanizing, you're doing all these things, you know, and it's like, well, that's not my fault. I just want to play. No, it is though. You have to take responsibility. You've been called at a higher position. Okay. Not everybody gets that. So we have to take responsibility when we're called to do something greater. We have to put in the grinding work then, or we have to step out of the light.
Yeah, him and I talked about this even beforehand. It's really sad. This is no different than, you know, hearing about famous preachers that are really trying to make a difference for God's kingdom. And you find out like years down the road, it falls to the wayside because they were having an affair or they were having a drug addiction or something. And it's just sad to me because not just that a marriage is ending, but it's sad to me because it was a Christian couple that was really trying to make a difference for God's kingdom when it comes to marriage. Yeah. And when I see stuff like this happen, I really just feel like, man, another testimony gone, you know, it potentially could hurt God's kingdom. And it's just sad to me because the main thing in the Bible says it can't be healed until you bring it into the light. And so it shouldn't matter how big or small your platform is, how big your circle of influence is, how small it is. Like, you can't let Satan back you into a corner of fear that you won't be open and transparent with your circle and your accountability partners of what you're struggling with and get assistance, help, or take responsibility of what's going on. Yeah. It was so vital. It's always the what ifs, right? If they would have had taken that high responsibility and just stepped forward and said, we have a problem. We're telling you guys, this is the steps to save your marriage. We're going to take a sabbatical because our marriage is struggling so much right now because this business has taken so much of us on. And how much more respect they probably would have gotten and what God could have done. Like, God can take anything and work miracles, move mountains for it. And if God was in the center of that business, if they would have devoted all of that to God, we don't know what he would have done. Maybe the business would have shut down because their marriage was more important than that. Maybe that's what God would have desired to happen. Sure. Yep. But maybe God would have desired their business to triple because of that, tenfold because of that. Yeah. We don't know. But what we do know is that with high calling does require high responsibility, and Satan will get you to a point in your life that you feel like you have so much to lose that you can't submit it over to God. That's what he wants you to feel. And it's just simply not true.
And that's so powerful. So we watched a little bit of an episode they have. So they did a podcast together. It's called Rides Together is the name of the podcast. And it is a good podcast.
Yeah.
It's great advice. There's a lot of good stuff on it. But episode 71, I don't remember the exact title name of it, but it was talking about their own marriage. And when they're talking about their own marriage, they're going back and forth, and they sit in this room, similar to like Kristy and I, and they're talking to each other.
They face each other, I think.
Yeah, they face each other. It's a little bit different, but it's it's just them two in a podcast, and they're talking with one another. And as they're doing it, you can hear that they're in their voice and the things they're saying is the real romance. And this is sad. The real romance that they have is their business. Yeah. They've come to be in love with their success in their business and not the success of each other in their own relationship. So it's phased them. It's actually literally went from one to the next in a phase almost. Now they found their own purpose and their own drive now in the success of the business and not the success in their marriage. And you don't have to pick one over the other. If you focus, I shouldn't say you don't have to pick one over the other. You can't pick the business over the marriage, because if you do, they'll both will fail.
Yeah.
If marriage is what you're selling, you have to focus on the marriage first and then focus on the business portion of it. I love that there's a diagram that you can see where it's got like the umbrella, that God has, and under the umbrella, the umbrella top, of course, is God. And then just below that is the man, and just below that is the woman, and just below that is the children, and so on and so forth. And there's a hierarchy of the way things that we're supposed to care for. It doesn't go God, man, business, then wife and family. It doesn't go that route, because we have to keep those things in line. And when we're called to do something great in this world, and God calls us all to do something great, we have to be willing to step up to that responsibility, because not only can we impact people in a fantastic way, we also can impact people in a horrific way. A lot of people are impacted by this when in all reality, they shouldn't be impacted by it, because they're humans, and humans are fallible. They fall. That's what we do. And if we're leaning all of our hope and desires into one couple, then we're really missing the whole point and purpose. Would I tell you to stay away from their content? I would never tell you that, because a lot of their content is amazing, good content. The unfortunate part of it is, though, they didn't focus on the things that mattered. Take your own advice. It's important that you take your own advice. Be vulnerable and transparent. Always be vulnerable and transparent, especially in your marriage. No matter what, your spouse will understand. If you're always vulnerable and transparent, they'll always understand. And then know that when you're called to do something great for God, you need to take that responsibility serious, because it's not just about you. It's not just about you.
Well, I think it's important during this time too. I mean, I don't know. I haven't done tons of research on if their divorce is final or not, but I think it's important for us to pray for them, because they are Christians. Yes. And God can heal anything, and God can repair anything. And I think it's very, very important that we pray for them right now. They have 4 kids that God can just put his healing hand on that whole situation right now. No matter what the outcome is, of course, God can work through it. But I just really think it's important, because to me, it's just really sad, especially when they obviously had a calling to help people, especially have a Christian influence for people's marriages. And that calling they were good at it, and God was blessing it. So I think it's important that whatever happened behind closed doors, we know it's got to be from Satan. We need to pray for a hedge of protection around that family and everything that's happening. And then, of course, for God's message to still be heard through all of it.
Amen. So today we want to make sure we hit you with a challenge, because it's important that we get challenged from this too. So don't think you're too far gone to seek help.
Yeah.
Don't allow your pride in whatever it is that you find success in to not think that you're too good to need a coach or a consultant or a mentor or somebody that you can lean into to seek out for help, because we all need help to some degree or another. Don't get lost up in the success of things going on in your life. Do not do that. It will fall. You're building it on sand at that point. Know that your relationship with God comes first. It has to come first. And if you feel like God is moved, it's not God that's moved. It's you. And you need to seek that help to keep that strengthened.
Yeah, that was one of the first things. And I don't know if this is true or not, but when Josh and I were talking about, I'm like, I wonder if they had a marriage counselor or like a couple, like an older couple with a successful marriage that they were going to for mentorship, because everybody should have something for mentorship. And especially when you're building a business on marriage and Christian community, all of that, you know that you're going to be attacked, you know, new level, new devil. It's just what happens. So I was like, I wonder if they had somebody that they were going to during all of this time. And I don't know if they did or not, that they were being honest and vulnerable with, that was trying to help them work through this during this time. Because Josh gave me a good analogy the other day about Tiger Woods. You say it because you say it better than me.
Well, I look at it like this. Tiger Woods is hands down the greatest golfer of all time, and he has a coach. He has a swing coach. He has coaches. Is that coach better than him at golf? No. But he needs somebody to help him in the details, in the small things. So you may be really good at something that you do. You may be great at your job. You may even be great at your relationship. But it doesn't mean that parts of you doesn't need to be encouraged and coached and helped. And if you think that you don't need it, then that's a whole other issue that you need to evaluate, because you're allowing your pride to get in the way. So you got to make sure that you're not too prideful to say, you know what, there's always something in my life that someone else can help me with. And it's true.
Yeah.
True. All right. I want to thank you for being here. This episode went a little long today, but we think that it was really powerful. It's really important. You know, we call ourselves...
I told a long story.
That's a good story. But, you know, we call ourselves the couple on fire, and we're on fire. We're not just on fire for marriage. We're on fire for God to do things in our lives, to teach us how to take our faith, our family, and our future to the next level personally. And we want to share this journey with you as well. So please do not forget to like and follow and share our page. Good old Facebook's algorithms. We don't get passed around unless you do the passing. So,
and we forgot to say it in the beginning.
We did.
Always forget.
And if you've made it this far, you're probably the greatest of all time.
In the beginning, comment on it and say, don't forget to tell people to like and share.
Yeah, I will. I'll make sure to do that. You want me to do it right now?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying the listeners.
Yeah.
The listeners should be like, hey, you guys need to say like and share because you always forget, you morons.
Right? So we always forget that part. We just get really caught up in the things that we want to talk about, you know, because we think it's really important. So anyway.
Because we're talkers.
Right. So this is episode 20. We want to make sure that you don't forget to like and follow and please share. And we'll see you guys next week.
Yep. Bye.